This is Gone Racin, VSiN's premier NASCAR betting podcast. Here are your hosts, former NASCAR driver Brendan Gaughan and Las Vegas Motor Speedway's Jeff Motley.
Yeah, it's another edition of Gone Racing. Jeff Motley sitting here in the studio. Brendan Gaughan is remote this week, so we'll see his picture in the box. There he is, Brendan popping up. Brendan, and hey, I mean, we're going to wrap up this race at Pocono, but Brendan, I'm trying to go down my scorecard here, okay? So let me get this right. Kyle Larson's mad at Denny Hamlin. Alex Bowman's mad at Denny Hamlin. Austin Dillon's mad at Tyler Reddick. Ryan Preece is mad at Corey LaJoie. And Joey Logano's mad at the fire and safety crew. Am I missing anybody? Because we had, it was like pit road at Bristol after that race.
Yeah, but Pocono's kind of got that way lately, right? I mean, Pocono with the runs you get in the drag races and the restarts, and Pocono's become a fun race to watch. But man, you're right. After the race, I mean, I'm still getting texts and video clips on Twitter and everything where, this guy's fighting that guy, and the Ryan Preece thing runs back and just starts clobbering on poor Corey.
Well,
and
Corey kept his helmet on inside the car, so good for Corey.
Good move in that case. But and then Joey Logano's thing, wow. I mean, it's a good thing we aren't the other type of NASCAR shows. We try to focus on betting because there's a lot of things I'd have to say about it, but man, that was just a lot of stuff going on there. Well, but a lot of great racing, and for three guys right here, not a bad week of betting for the three of us.
Hey, somebody got 4 right this week. 4. I'm just saying. I got 4 out of 5. Maybe my best week of all time. All right, Brendan, let's break them down a little bit real quick. So, first off, we're talking about Joey. I mean, first off, you ever go on Twitter, you can find audio of Joey and the fire and safety crew at Pocono. Not happy with them. But then thinking about how upset he was about that, and then you watch the video of the car being drug around the track to pit road and then dropped facing in the wrong direction in pit lane. I can't believe how Joey kept his composure when he did his interview in front of the care center, because that was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, well, because he'd already vented where he'd already got his vent in, let's just say. It was impressive, but, Joey, poor day, bad day for Joey, bad day for that deal. But we said, man, them Chevys and them Toyotas were absolutely fantastic. And it came down to a battle of Toyota on the restarts, lining up. Toyota, Chevrolet were their teammates. Teammates were even mad at each other. Denny and Martin Truex were kind of having interesting conversations on their radios about who to line up with. It boiled down to a heck of a restart showdown. And great racing even without the restarts.
Yeah, and Denny Hamlin gets the win. Denny, who's been probably the top guy at Pocono probably for the last 15 years. Talk about there was controversy, they said, for that last pass. I mean, he didn't give Larson a lot of room, obviously, but we're also late in the race. We're running for the checkered flag. I mean, isn't that kind of what we've come to right now? It's just good, hard racing. And, two guys are trying to win the race. And, Larson, look, he was first on the restart. He could have chosen the inside line and driven Denny up the track himself, right?
Absolutely. The bottom line looked like it didn't get the launch as the outside line, but you have that advantage. You can run up. Now, was this what Denny did to Ross Chastain a year ago? No. He was a little more aggressive, pushed Ross up a little bit earlier, basically saying, I don't care. This was Denny drove hard. He left Kyle a lane. They moved up. Kyle, at this point, discretion and valor. Kyle came into the wall pretty good there. But am I supposed to say, oh, gee, I got to let you have it? This is for the win, man. He didn't wreck him. He didn't use him up. He just drove hard, lost a little of the nose. They kind of pushed up together, and Kyle was on the outside, and it just didn't have – he didn't touch him if you look at him. They ran up the track a little bit. So it's for the win, and I don't knock that move in this case. And Denny, like you said, we talked about it on last week's show. Who's the number one guy at Pocono? Denny Hamlin, and he just did it again.
Yeah, the only bad thing for Denny is there's no Pocono in the playoffs. Well, let's look at some of these numbers that Denny put out for our bettors last week. He was a plus 550 to win, a plus 150 for a top 3, plus 245 to win Group A. He was on the negative number in all of his head-to-heads against Truex, Busch, and Larson, but he also brought Toyota home with a victory, a plus 140. A couple of us really, really liked that bet, by the way, knowing that we had Denny and Martin Truex Jr. driving a Toyota, and Toyota wasn't even the favorite. So very, very strong payout for Denny Hamlin for the bettors, which is really kind of remarkable when you think about the fact that he's been the dominant guy at Pocono all these years, and yet he could give you this kind of a return to the bettors.
Yeah, we said that last week. Man, we gave the stats of who's been the best at Pocono. Denny was at the top, and a 550. Look, he was one of the favorites, absolutely, but it's still a 550 decent return. The 245 in Group A, all those things, you found good ways to get numbers on him. We knew he was a head-to-head. He was the don't line last week, right? We talked about where negative, but got Toyota the 140. I was happy about the Toyota 140 thing because at the last second I jumped off the Michael McDowell bandwagon, which still won. But I got me the Toyota W.
Absolutely. And looking at the top three, talking about the Toyotas swept the top three positions. Tyler Reddick, he came in at a plus 400, finishing second, and Martin Truex Jr. was a plus 150. Look down the rest of the top 10. Ty Gibbs gets his first ever top 5 finish. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who's going to make the playoffs now that we're locked into all those who have won races, not counting Shane Van Gisbergen because he's not eligible for the playoffs. Harrison Burton with an 8th, and another top 10 run for the Legacy Motorsports team with Eric Jones that's starting to show some life.
Yeah, listen, you want to talk about some much needed good runs. Let's start with that Harrison Burton 8th place, that Eric Jones 9th place. Those were absolutely much needed. And you want to talk about timing. How about Ty Gibbs? We've been talking for weeks. That cutoff line is a battle royale. Ty Gibbs in the middle of it. Great time for Ty Gibbs to have a great run.
Yeah, and we talked about the Toyotas, Brendan. There's only 6 Toyotas in the race. 5 of them finished in the top 6 positions in this race. That's and Bubba Wallace ran well all day, and I think he had some problems in those last few laps and knocked him out of the top 10.
Yeah, Bubba was actually running really well there. Had that got into a Hasselhoff on I think the second to last restart or whatever it was. But Bubba was actually doing really well. But I mean, these names, this was much needed. I mean, absolutely much needed. But and look at the main thing again. 1 Ford in the top 10. Kevin Harvick, who's the guy that just keeps, right now, he's just top 5, top 10ing. But 1 Ford. The Fords, the big tracks, we've talked about it, Jeff. I said the flat tracks like the week before. The Fords just need to figure something out at all these other style racetracks.
Yeah, you're right. Although we would give a little bit of an asterisk there. Joey Logano, I mean, he won the first stage, had a really good car, kind of got caught up in a crash that really wasn't his own making because of pit strategy there. He was strong, but you're exactly right. The Fords definitely seem to be struggling, and the Chevrolets didn't exactly set the world on fire this weekend either. Speaking of which, Chase Elliott, he finished 10th, but hey, that ain't good enough right now for Chase Elliott if he wants to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and Chase won this race last year, so this was one I think they were looking at, and I was bragging. I'm still going, Jeff. I will still be picking a Chase Elliott just about every week because I still think he's going to win a race. But 10th place is not going to get him into the playoffs. He needs to start having those top 5s, get himself back up in contention every week. This is not going to cut it.
Well, speaking of the playoffs right now, so I mentioned earlier the top 11 guys, or the 11 guys that have won races that are eligible for the points, they are now locked in because we only have 5 races left. We have 5 spots available. Now we look at this bubble, Brendan, and we got the 2 guys that have been kind of down there on the bottom of that bubble. Bubba Wallace, 465. Michael McDowell is at 455. That's 17 points for Michael McDowell, clear of A.J. Allmendinger. That's 23 points clear of Daniel Suarez. That's 28 points clear of Ty Gibbs, and Alex Bowman still hanging in. What I can't figure out with Alex Bowman is the guy seems to finish outside the top 30 every week, and somehow he's still popping up in the top 20. Tells you what a struggle it's going to be to get into that top 16.
Well, I mean, he's finally on this page again. I think the last couple of weeks he wasn't even on the page, so he has slowly climbed himself back up into at least a consideration, right? I mean, he's just not running. He needs to run better. He finished 24th this week. He got stage points, 5th place stage points in stage 2. He can still point his way in, but he's going to have to really start making up some ground here. 50 points or 46 points, whatever it is, 44 points is going to be it's a tall order, but he can do it. Unlike Chase now, who I believe Chase has to win to get in.
Well, and as we talk about the playoffs, like I said, 5 races left. This weekend, we're heading out to the 3/4 mile track in Central Virginia at Richmond International Raceway. Then we head up to Michigan. But then it's going to really start getting interesting because these last 3 races, back-to-back road course races at Indianapolis and at Watkins Glen, and then the big race there at Daytona, which you kind of never know how that goes. And we're talking about that guy sitting right there in 17th spot right now, A.J. Allmendinger. If you're A.J. Allmendinger, if you don't have Indianapolis and Watkins Glen circled on your calendar right now, then you're asleep at the wheel. And I think it's a little bit odd that, he's going to start the race this week dead last so that he can go to Road America and run the Xfinity race. What do you think about that?
I'm a guy that likes to race. I always say race, no matter what they can get a hold of. Right now, he's just missing the playoffs. Right now, he's so close. I understand that you want him at Road America because he's phenomenal there. Man, you got to really start focusing here. I think this says that Kaulig is really looking at Indianapolis and Watkins Glen and Daytona as their only shot to get him in. That's the way I look at this right now. They're putting their eggs in the last 3 races basket, kind of saying maybe we don't have it for Richmond.
Well, and I think it's interesting when you look at those last 3 races and you look at guys in 15th, 16th, 17th. Bubba Wallace, Michael McDowell, they got Daytona circled. Allmendinger's got those road courses circled. Somebody pulls an upset. I think that's going to make it really, really interesting to see how the bottom of that thing shakes out.
No, it's that last race at Daytona. That's why they put the Daytona, right? That's why we moved it to, NASCAR's, founding home, because what Daytona does for that last race is absolutely it's the perfect place to do it, Jeff. You know what I mean? It's the absolute perfect place.
No, it absolutely is, and that's why I'm really looking forward to the way these last 5 races shake out before we get into the playoffs. Okay, we'll be back on Gone Racing. We'll start giving the odds for this weekend at Richmond.
This is Gone Racing, VSiN's premier NASCAR betting podcast. Here are your hosts, former NASCAR driver Brendan Gaughan and Las Vegas Motor Speedway's Jeff Motley.
And the green flag is back out here on Gone Racing. Brendan is remote with us this week, checking in from North Carolina, right? Are you teaching scuba diving to a bunch of kids back there in North Carolina or something?
Actually, the Lake Norman Scuba SEAL Team camp is right outside this window to my right, and I'm playing hooky for an hour from camp. I'm one of the counselors teaching the class. Got my kids in the advanced open water class that is going the last couple of days. And you remember old Rochelle Rice, our good friend who now works for the Super Bowl. Rochelle's 2 boys are out here with me, so we're all getting scuba certified, and I'm teaching class for them.
Let me see if I got this right. Part casino owner, part-time race car driver, distiller, Justice Brothers rep, cleaning company owner, and now scuba dive instructor. Do you need another job?
No. You left out the co-host of the most professionally unprofessional show on VSiN.
He's the NASCAR version of Shaq with all these endorsements and jobs he has.
Something like that. Not to mention, and you fill in, right? Somehow,
That's right.
Great shot of the empty chair.
Oh yeah, didn't the South Point car won last week in the Tony Stewart?
That's
team,
right. Newman won the SRX race.
Yeah.
Newman's stealing money, but at least he's doing the most. I texted him and said, thanks for stealing my money, but really nice job with what you're doing with it.
SRX sponsor. Oh yeah, forgot about that one too. So, okay, we digress. Guess what? We're heading to my home state, Richmond, Virginia this weekend. Not my hometown, but my home state, being a Virginia guy. So always happy when they head back there. And it's a 3/4 mile D-shaped track. Kevin Harvick won this race last year, but Kyle Larson was the winner there earlier this year. And, the interesting thing about the race this year, the first race there, second place finisher filling in for Chase Elliott when he had injured himself in his snowboarding accident. Josh Berry got a second. Brendan, it's going to be a pretty interesting weekend at Richmond. And there's some guys who probably really, really need to not only have a good run, but a guy like Chase Elliott who needs to pull out a win.
Well, 9 races, 5 top 5s for Chase Elliott at Richmond. So no wins, but 5 top 5s. He's always there. And they ran very well earlier this year with, of course, that finish there. And you look at the stats here of some of the guys. Kyle Busch, though, did not have a good run here his first time with RCR at Richmond. He ended up with a fairly mediocre day for him when you count, Look at that, 27 top 10s out of 35 races. That's an 80% clip there, folks. And over 50% top 5. I mean, that's absolutely redonkulous. Denny Hamlin, same sort of numbers. Kevin Harvick, even more ridiculous. I mean, that's just crazy what they've been able to do there.
Yeah, and they've got so many data points. I mean, they've run so many races here. You know, you look at those guys, even Brad Keselowski, he's had, and Joey Logano, both of those guys have had top 10s in at least half or more than half of the races. I mean, Logano's got really incredible numbers, 12 top 5s in 28 races and 2 wins. So a lot of guys with some strong showings there at Richmond. I think it's going to be kind of interesting to see how much we glean from the first race at Richmond this year. You know, you get early in the year, later in the year, everything is a little bit different. And you got certain guys that are hot and certain guys that weren't. Like Martin Truex Jr. wasn't that hot early in the season. Now Martin Truex Jr., I still think, even though Denny Hamlin won last week, I think Truex is the hottest driver out there. So I think you got to take a long look at him, even though his numbers at Richmond don't necessarily stack up to, say, Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, and Kevin Harvick.
Well, still pretty spectacular. I mean, 3 wins, you know, and what you really have to look at, though, is what have you done for me lately, right? I mean, he's been fantastic lately. So I like him a lot. You look at these numbers out there. Truex is the hottest guy, man. When we get to the odds, I think that's also going to shine through.
Well, let's get to the odds. We'll take a look at the odds to win, and it's not going to be a big surprise then that Martin Truex Jr. is the favorite to win the race at plus 450. Kyle Larson, and we mentioned he won the race there earlier this year, comes in at plus 500. Denny Hamlin, where it truly is Denny's home track, grew up in Chesterfield, Virginia, literally probably less than 10 miles from Richmond International Raceway. He's at plus 650. Kevin Harvick and Christopher Bell at plus 750. Kyle Busch plus 850. William Byron is at 900. Then we get into our double digits. Joey Logano is 12-1. Ross Chastain and Chase Elliott at 16. Ryan Blaney at 22. Tyler Reddick and Ty Gibbs at 28. Brad Keselowski at 30. Alex Bowman 40. And Eric Almirola 45. Anything jump out at you, Brendan? Because I'm telling you, there's a couple things there that really do jump out at me.
Yeah, you know, like Kyle Busch at 850. I know, you know, he had that bad run earlier, but this is a place he's so freaking good at. That one immediately jumps off the page to me. Also looking at a guy like Chase Elliott. I know you're poo-pooing Chase Elliott, but that team finished second. This is a place he's always had top 5s at. You know, that we saw that stat, 14 starts in the last 10. He's only had 9, and he's had all of his top 5s in the last 9 starts. So those are the two that jump off immediately at me.
Well, and you mentioned Chase Elliott, and this is one where I'm actually going to agree with you. And maybe part of it because that car finished second in the race earlier this year. And I think Chase Elliott, I mean, look, if there's a race he's got a little something to prove, Josh Berry hops in that car with very little experience in a Cup car, and he runs second in that race back in April, or I think it was April when they ran that race. So I think Chase Elliott's got something to prove. And the other guy who had a really good run here earlier in the spring, also at 16-1, is Ross Chastain. Now, I know he hasn't been quite as good maybe over the last year or whatever, but that win he got at Nashville, and I know it's a 1.3 mile track at Nashville, but the layout at Nashville is very, very similar to Richmond. It's just a longer, bigger track. And I think the fact that he ran well there in the spring and the fact that he's got a win at Nashville in a track that has some similarities, I think 16-1 is a really big number on Ross Chastain.
That is a big number. Ross Chastain, these are the type of places that Ross has been, he's running well. Ross this year is a little bit of that kind of that Hendrick enigma, right? He's Ross Chastain winning some races. He disappeared for a while with all the controversy, came back and won. Now we haven't talked much about him again. So I'm kind of conundrum with Ross Chastain, but listen, 16-1, that's a good number for a guy that's been running pretty strong just about everywhere we go on normal occasions.
Yeah, one other guy I just want to kind of mention before we move into the bigger numbers here. William Byron's plus 900. Now I know you look at William Byron's numbers at Richmond, you say, well, he hadn't been that great. Well, guess what? There's a lot of places that he has run well this year where he hadn't run well that much in the past. I think this has been William Byron's breakout year, and I think getting William Byron at a plus 900, whew, boy, that's a tough one to leave on the board too.
Yeah, I mean, look, what was it? 3 weeks ago, before Martin Truex was hot, William Byron was the hottest guy in the sport, right? So, I mean, we've been back and forth on the hottest guy. William Byron's one of them. Listen, even Alex Bowman, 40-1. I mean, the guy disappears and then shows back up. So Alex Bowman, another guy I like on this first page.
Yeah, definitely a good chance to get somebody that's got a little bit bigger number than you'd expect to win. All right, let's look at more of our long shot guys here. Chris Buescher and Bubba Wallace are both coming in at 55-1. Daniel Suarez is 65. Chase Briscoe 70. Then our triple digits, Preece and Newman at 100. Ryan Newman back in. I just almost read right over his name. Ryan Preece and Ryan Newman. I'm assuming he's racing one of the Rick Ware cars, probably at 100-1. Austin Dillon 150. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. 200. Haley Jones and Allmendinger 250. McDowell, Burton, Cindric at 300. Gilliland and LaJoy at 500. And our little buddy Noah Gregson didn't even make the list this week. So anybody here that that has any kind of a chance? Chris Buescher maybe? Suarez?
I mean, I think this is a little more of a standard, right? This is the places we're used to kind of the cream being there. We don't see, I mean, Josh Berry, I guess would have been kind of an exception to that. But I just don't see a lot. Maybe top threes. Maybe when we get to the top threes, I'd look at a Buescher maybe. McDowell, but he hasn't been top 3 caliber. He's been top 15, top 10 caliber. So the second page to me is a little bit, I'm not going to say off limits this week, but definitely not as appeasing or enticing, which the numbers show it, right? I mean, midway through that first column, you're already at 70 and 100-1. So I think even the odds makers know it's not quite as appeasing as the other places.
All right, well, let's take a look at these top threes we got coming here. No big surprise here that Martin Truex Jr. is at the very top of the board at a plus 130. Kyle Larson comes in at plus 140. Denny Hamlin 180. Kevin Harvick, Christopher Bell 200. Kyle Busch 250. William Byron 260. Logano 350. Chastain and Elliott 450. Blaney 600. Reddick and Gibbs 700. Keselowski 750. Bowman 900. Eric Almirola at 10-1.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I can look at and say, okay, now we're talking some decent numbers. I mean, Joey Logano, second best point getter, but I don't like the Fords. Ross Chastain up there with that number. Chase Elliott at a 450 for a top 3. How about Tyler Reddick at plus 700 for a top 3? I mean, those same guys we talked about for the win, but now I can focus in a little bit and say I get a little bit more of a shot. I really like that Chase Elliott 450 number.
Well, and I think another one that kind of stands out there, and I know this is going to get Wyatt very excited behind the glass. Brad Keselowski has been good at Richmond, and we're not talking about a win. We're talking about getting a top 3, plus 750 on Brad Keselowski. I think that's a pretty strong number there. So I'm thinking there's definitely a lot of value here in some of these guys. Tyler Reddick is another one. I mean, I expect Tyler Reddick to run well, don't you?
So do I. I mean, I'm looking, but now I go down. Michael McDowell finished 6th in this race in the spring. So he's pretty good there too. Those guys, there's some value.
Well, there's definitely going to be some value there. We've got a few more top threes, the long shots. We'll talk about those when we come back, and then we'll start getting into our driver head-to-heads, and we'll get into our group matchups in segment 3 of Gone Racin'.
This is Gone Racing, VSiN's premier NASCAR betting podcast. Here are your hosts, former NASCAR driver Brendan Gaughan and Las Vegas Motor Speedway's Jeff Motley.
Want to rewatch any part of today's show or any past show? Check out the Gone Racing podcast. It's free and available now at VSiN.com/podcast or wherever you get your podcast. We give you all the latest news, odds, and everything you need to know to head to the betting counter before each NASCAR Cup Series race. And while you're there, catch up on all the other VSiN shows as well. That's VSiN.com/podcasts. Jeff Motley and Brendan Gaughan joining us from scuba school back in North Carolina, where he's teaching the kiddies some scuba diving. And we're talking about things at Richmond Raceway. Brendan, you could just head on up to Richmond this weekend. You're pretty close there in Charlotte. I think you could make it in about 4 hours driving if you wanted to head up there.
I am, except the only thing I'd ever want to do at Richmond again is fill it with water and scuba dive. So I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, Richmond was not your favorite place. All right, we're finishing up our top threes this weekend. By the way, this weekend's race is the Cookout 400. You've been to Cookout? You used to live here in North Carolina, right? There was a cookout right by my
street. I can go there.
There was a cookout right by my parents' house in Virginia, there in Martinsville, and I'm telling you, I used to love the little pulled pork barbecue. Leave the slaw off because I don't care for that. But, oh, my gosh, those things were delicious. So Cookout, very underrated. We need one in Las Vegas. Let's maybe you and I open up a franchise. We'll get a Cookout and a Bojangles. What do you think?
Oh, I'd definitely be on the Bojangles. I had a spicy chicken biscuit for breakfast yesterday morning.
Isaiah approves of this. He's willing to be a silent partner.
Okay, all right, silent partner. Well, as long as he brings some money to the table, he can be as silent as he wants to. All right, let's finish up.
As silent as he wants.
Exactly. All right, we'll finish up our top threes here. Chris Buescher, Bubba Wallace are 15-1. Daniel Suarez 16. Chase Briscoe 18. Ryan Preece and Ryan Newman 25. Austin Dillon 40. Stenhouse 55. Haley, Jones, Allmendinger at 60. McDowell, Burton, Cindric at 70. Gilliland, LaJoy 130. I don't know if I see anybody sneaking in here unless, I don't know, maybe a couple of those guys at the top at 15.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to focus. Chris Buescher finished third here in the second race last year. So in the playoff race, Chris Buescher finished third. You know, that if you're looking for a high-digit guy, I could zero in on Chris Buescher right there and say, I like that move. I think we at least have a shot. That was with RFK. That was before the resurgence of RFK. So I don't mind the Chris Buescher 15-1 bet right there.
Yeah, I think that'd be about the only one. Maybe Suarez 16 could sneak in there, but not really feeling a lot of the top threes. Okay, let's take a look at our driver head-to-heads. And, well, if you want to bet against Martin Truex Jr. and do so at your own peril, there is money to be won. I mean, Christopher Bell, a plus 140 to Truex's minus 160. Hamlin, plus 125 to Truex minus 145. A couple of them up there that are pretty big numbers. But honestly, Brendan, I don't think I would touch those.
I don't know. That's C-Bell at 140 head-to-head. Christopher Bell finished fourth in this race last year. Or in the race earlier this year, 8th and 2nd in the stages at a plus 140 head-to-head. Yeah, I get it's against Truex, but that's still a plus 140 head-to-head number with a guy that he's – if you look at his history, he's only got where is he here? 6 starts, 4 of them top 5s, 5 of them top 10s, average finish 5.7. The only guy better is Truex, but a plus 140 – I kind of like that.
Brendan, are you not getting the feeling, though, over the last half of the season so far, that Christopher Bell is almost turning into the Denny Hamlin of the past? It's like every single race, something happens. He's fast in qualifying. He's fast in practice. He's fast at the start of the race. He ends up with either a pit road mistake. He ends up in the wall. He ends up spinning out. It's almost like something is headed south with that team, and I can't figure out what it is.
It's almost the William Byron, Eric Almirola thing we used to talk about last year, right? Where he's all great, and then we don't know what he does, but he is making a lot of mistakes on pit road. He needs to run over to Truex's side and take some more lessons from Truex than he does from Denny type thing. But still, I mean, that's just a plus 140 head to head. I don't care about all that stuff. I kind of like that.
Well, strangely enough, the one that I probably like the best on there is actually William Byron going head-to-head against Christopher Bell, because I think anytime I can get William Byron on a plus line, I kind of like William Byron on a plus line. I like that one, and I kind of like Chase Elliott against Kyle Busch, maybe only because Kyle didn't run that well here in the spring, and so maybe this is a track where Chase kind of gets it together and runs well, if he kind of just can figure things out. So I kind of like those two.
Yeah, but what about, look at the two tracks that are similar, right? St. Louis we talk about and New Hampshire. St. Louis, Kyle Busch dominated that race, Jeff. He won the race, led 121 laps. Very similar, with that turn one, that tight, they got shifting going on. I think Kyle Busch just had a bad Richmond race, if you want the truth, and he doesn't have it often. So I see a big resurgence out of him. So I'm on the other side. Let's take that as a side bet. I'll take Kyle Busch. You take William Byron, and we'll see where it ends up.
Well, no, that's the Chase Elliott Kyle Busch.
Chase Elliott, not William Byron.
Yeah. So, okay. We'll think about that one. Okay, let's get into our group matchups here. We'll start out with Group A, and this might be one of the biggest favorites in Group A I've seen in quite some time. Martin Truex Jr. is not going to bring you a lot of money here. He's a plus 190. Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson both at plus 295. Christopher Bell comes in at plus 345. Do you want to bet against Martin? And if you do, and he has a problem early, there's money to be won.
Wow, I mean, plus 345 in a Group A. Talk about trying to entice me here. Man, I don't know. That's a lot of cheese in that Group A to get. I mean, I know you're going against Truex, Denny, and Kyle, but even Denny and Kyle at 295. I mean, Denny Hamlin at 295. Those are big numbers in Group A, Jeff. I know I don't normally like Group A, but man, they're trying to talk me into it.
Well, and my problem with it here is, I mean, there is a part of me that says, hey, man, those are big numbers. But I don't know. I don't know which one to pick as things are buzzing in here. I'm not sure what's going on.
Work here. That scared the crap out
We
of me,
we have construction work going on outside. It's like just short of a jackhammer if you guys hear that buzzing noise in the background of our podcast today. So anyway, but what I was saying, Brendan, it's hard to pick which one you think is going to beat Truex. That's part of the issue.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, but Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell, I could take both of them and get a 295 and a 345 and root for C-Bell the whole time. And I don't know. I kind of like that.
It is a big number. Speaking of big numbers, let's look at Group B. William Byron heads it up at plus 235. Kyle Busch is plus 245. Harvick plus 270. And a huge number on Chase Elliott at plus 355.
At the 355, Jeff, that's the numbers based off of what you say, right? What have you done for me lately? And Chase Elliott, you're fading him. So that's why he's at 355. I think that might be my Chase Elliott bet for the week. You know how I said I'm going to bet him each week at least once? That might be my bet for Chase Elliott this week.
Well, it would certainly be a good return there. That's a tough group for me right there. I mean, my gut feeling is I think Byron is the better one there. I know you kind of liked Kyle Busch a little bit there. And when you're talking about head-to-head with William Byron. But that big number on Chase Elliott, hard to leave out there if you think this is finally the week that Chase puts it together. All right, looking at Group C, Ryan Blaney and Ross Chastain both come in at a plus 235. Tyler Reddick is plus 315, and Brad Keselowski at plus 320.
You know, I know we talk a lot of Brad Love on this show, and this year I've been cashing a lot of tickets with Brad. He did finish 10th in this race earlier this year. My problem is Ross Chastain finished 3rd, and you know, Tyler Reddick is one of my perennial favorites just about everywhere we go right now. So I kind of like the Tyler Reddick 315 with the return, but I'm afraid to bet against Ross Chastain in that one. Blaney should not, in my opinion, Blaney should not be the favorite in that group. Ryan Blaney's stats here do not scream that. Last 10 races, 3 top 10s, average finish 16.6. So I can take that a 3-man horse race, but I still can't. It's hard to whittle between the 3.
Well, and I'm kind of with you. I'm definitely taking Blaney out of the mix here, and I kind of take a little bit of Brad K out of the mix. I really do think this comes down to Reddick and Chastain, and the fact that Reddick could get a plus 315 on this number, I think that's a huge number to give Tyler Reddick. Really like Tyler Reddick just because the number's so big. You know, if they flip-flop Tyler Reddick with Ryan Blaney, I may not be as keen on it, but I think at a plus 315, I think it's certainly worth the risk. All right, we'll take a look at our Group D. Ty Gibbs comes in fresh off his first ever top 5 finish last week at Pocono, plus 225. Bubba Wallace is plus 230. And then big numbers on Eric Almirola and Daniel Suarez at plus 330.
Yeah, this one for me is probably the one that's the toughest to handicap, right? I mean, Ty Gibbs kind of the hottest hand. Bubba Wallace, you know, has been okay. Eric Almirola 330. If I'm going to pick one, I'm going to jump out there and say Daniel Suarez, just because the Trackhouse teams probably he's the most consistent out of that group. But Ty Gibbs at the favorite. I don't know. This is my group. I just kind of look at, and this is my Jeff Motley group.
You throw up the X on this one. Well, I tell you what I kind of like here is I really like the 2 Toyotas up there at the top. I think Ty Gibbs definitely he's got a little bit of momentum, I think, going his way right now. So I think with Ty Gibbs having a little bit of momentum, still getting a plus 225, and if you really kind of look at it, kind of a head-to-head with Bubba Wallace, I kind of like Ty Gibbs here. All right, we come back for our final segment of Gone Racing. We'll finish up our groups, and we'll tell you how we did last week and give you our picks.
This is Gone Racing, VSiN's premier NASCAR betting podcast. Here are your hosts, former NASCAR driver Brendan Gaughan and Las Vegas Motor Speedway's Jeff Motley.
Well, it's our final segment here of Gone Racing this week. We get the white flag out, our final lap from Wyatt back there behind the glass. And we're finishing up our group matchups with this weekend's Cookout 400 at Richmond International Raceway. It's our second trip to Richmond this year. I think, Brendan, this is, other than Atlanta, this is our first track we've made a second trip back to this year. So at least these guys do have some data points. We're going to get back to our groups with Group E, where Austin Dillon, Ryan Preece, and A.J. Allmendinger are all plus 270, and Eric Jones is plus 275. Talk about throwing a blanket over the group.
Yeah, but you know what? Austin Dillon, I look at the last 10 races, 5 top 10 finishes, 1 top 5, average finish 12.5. That is leaps and bounds above the rest of the guy he's in the group with. So I can look at that right off the bat and say Austin Dillon, yeah, it's a blanket. Yeah, it's the boring odd group, but I think Austin Dillon should be more of a favorite than that. So I'm jumping on that Austin Dillon group.
Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. This is my throw up the X here. I don't really know where to go here. Dillon, it seems to be that team is just, seems like they have one problem after another. If Allmendinger wasn't going to start this race last, I just know how easy it is on these short tracks that you can get lapped early. That would make me kind of like Allmendinger a little bit more. And look, let's face it, Eric Jones, he's been running well, getting top 10s lately. So he certainly has figured something out. So to me, there's some cases to be made for everybody. Even Preece, you never know what you're going to get there. So I think this is
well, but average finishes 12.5 for Austin Dillon, and then after that, it's all 20, mid-20s plus. So that's what I look at, is the average running spot is way big in Austin's favor. Mr.
Analytics, Brendan Gaughan, the stat man. That's you're right. It's right there in black and white. I mean, that's what the numbers say. So I kind of look at how they've done lately, and I just think that team is struggling right now a little bit. All right, let's take a look at Group F. Justin Haley is the favorite at plus 245. Harrison Burton plus 260. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. plus 290. And Austin Cindric at plus 295.
Again, you got a Woods Brothers / Penske car and a Penske car in Group F. These two boys need to step up and start doing something. Stenhouse got the most experience, right? I mean, average finish 21, last 10 races, not great there, but I mean, Cindric, just because he's in the best equipment.
The numbers are really big on Stenhouse and Cindric here, and you're right. Cindric's in the best equipment. Stenhouse seems to be the guy. It's just you never know which races Haley all of a sudden decides, oh, this is my week. Although I'm just wondering about the fact he's announced he's leaving that team at the end of this year, if he's going to get quite as much support as he was getting earlier in the year.
It's a legit concern, right? I mean, sometimes they don't want him back in the reindeer games now. They don't want him in all the meetings. They won't withhold any equipment from him, but he's just not going to have all the knowledge and sim time and all the rest of the stuff these kids get. They're definitely going to start slowing down on that.
No, you're exactly right. It's going to be very curious to see what happens. I actually kind of like Stenhouse here in this group, just because of experience. I think he's got confidence. They know they're in the playoffs now, so now they can actually start trying to work on things to get some more playoff points as they move on. So kind of like Stenhouse here. All right, let's take a look at our manufacturer prop this week. A little bit different. We've seen Chevy at the top of this board for a number of weeks, but Toyota is the favorite at plus 140, Chevy at plus 160, and Ford in the distance, based on kind of like what Brendan's been saying about the Fords lately, at plus 250.
Yeah, they need to put that forward at plus 400 to start enticing people, because even then I don't think I'd bet it. But what I do like is, hey, Chevrolet's not the favorite. I mean, look, we've talked mostly about Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., Christopher Bell. We didn't even mention Tyler Reddick that much, and he's one of them. But you're giving me Chevy at 160. First week they haven't been the favorite that I can remember in a while. I can jump back on that Chevy bandwagon and give it the 160.
Well, it's hard for me to leave Toyota out there. Near last week, they weren't the favorite, but they were still plus 140. Brendan, a couple of us picked that Toyota to win last week, pat ourselves on the back a little bit. And I just like the fact that you're getting Truex, you're getting Hamlin, you're getting Bell, you're getting Reddick. You're getting a lot of and you're getting Truex. I mean, there's a lot of really, really good drivers out there, and there's Toyotas now, and you get a plus 140 number. I wouldn't have been shocked to have seen that number to be even lower the way these Toyotas have been running lately. So kind of like Toyota there over Chevy, just because the number is the same as it was last week. They just happen to be the favorite. All right, let's take a look at our championship odds right now. And Martin Truex Jr.'s odds continue to get worse if you're trying to win money on him. He's down to a plus 450. Chase Elliott is at 15-1. That's the guy who certainly has made the big drop since the beginning of the season. Probably not a lot of movement since last week. I think maybe Denny Hamlin maybe ticked down a little bit with that win last week, but because he got a lot of playoff points. But we're not seeing much movement in these championship standings right now unless somebody outside the top 16 picks up a win.
Yeah, and right now my two favorites there are Ross Chastain and Chase Elliott, and even Tyler Reddick. 22-1, 15-1, 15-1. Right there. There's your best value. There's your best kind of late season hedge. Put a couple on them and hold that in your back pocket. See what happens near the Final Four. All
right. Well, let's take a look at how we did last week. And Brendan, it was a lot of fun for the two of us. If I remember going into last week, I was just barely staying ahead of the pit crew. I mean, they were close enough to basically break my draft and spin me out without hitting me. Boy, big difference. I got 4 out of 5 right last week. I took Kyle Busch on the don't line with Byron and Larson, got those. McDowell winning his group and Toyota getting the win. And Brendan, you had another stellar week. You also had the Byron over Busch pick and the Toyota pick. So you and I went together on a couple of picks, got those, picked Reddick to win his group. And the pit crew, they jumped on that Michael McDowell bandwagon, but some tough losses out there.
The tough losses for the pit crew was we had 3 group winners finish in the top 10, and they didn't win their group. But the one guy who does win his group finished 19th. That was just – and then also thank you, Denny, for, the Kyle Larson incident. So as another we keep getting just pricked to death here.
Well, listen, you guys were all pissed off. I had Bowman. Bowman was running like, I'm sitting there going, Bowman, stay up there, baby. Give me that plus 900 top 3. And then the wheels fell off kind of proverbially with Bowman. And the bad news is for the folks at home, not only did the wheels fall off for that, I had Motley and Wyatt texting going, oh, thank God Bowman's out. Ha, ha, ha. I'm like, thanks.
Well, I think Wyatt was like, hey, we need to be glad that happened. Yeah, I think it was something along those lines. Not that it's like we're going to catch Brendan anyway. I mean, this is like some race from like 1966 where Richard Petty had 11 laps on the field right now. So as long as Brendan doesn't find a way to blow his engine, I believe he's going to be in really good shape. We got 15 races left. And to do the math, I'm 54 points behind Brendan. So how many do I have to make up each week? I got to make up like 4 points a week or so to pass him. So, yeah, that's going to be a lot. Mm-hmm. Okay, and with that, we will get to our picks for this week. And, Wyatt, take it away for the pit crew.
All right, we got Christopher Bell over Martin Truex Jr. plus 140. The old saying, hell has no fury as a driver scoring. We're going Kyle Larson to go Group A plus 295. Like what Harvick's been doing the last couple weeks. I got him at Group B plus 270. Justin Haley to win Group F at plus 245. And we're taking the Chevy to the levee, and hopefully it ain't dry. We want it to win, plus 160.
Okay, and you know what that means? Nobody's going to get jinxed this week because I can tell you that I don't have any of the same picks as a pit crew. I'm going to go with one head-to-head. I'm going to take William Byron over Christopher Bell in a head-to-head, and then I've got 3 group picks. I'm going to take Tyler Reddick in Group C at that plus 315. I'm taking Ty Gibbs. I'm really on that Toyota bandwagon, as you can tell, at a plus 225. I'm taking Ricky Stenhouse Jr. at plus 290 to win Group F. And then I'm going to stick to the Toyotas in the manufacturer picks there. Toyota at plus 140 for the manufacturers.
Well, this is going to be fun because we have a lot of head-to-head battles, all 3 of us this week then. All right. I'm going Christopher Bell over Martin Truex. That plus 140 is just sticking out there too big to me. I told you I'm picking Chase Elliott every week, and Chase Elliott to win Group B with that big long odd. That's what I'm going with. I'm going Austin Dillon to win Group E. Like I said, Austin Dillon in the stats, just that to me is the biggest statistical anomaly. Denny Hamlin Group A. I guess I should have started that one. Denny at 295 at Richmond. Even though I love Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin at 295. You can't pass up at his home track. And then I'm jumping on the Toyota at 160. Just 160 Toyota, man. I mean, sorry, Chevy 160, not Toyota. I was reading the number right, the name wrong. Chevy at 160. They've been favored all year, so I'm jumping on the Chevy bandwagon because they still got too much ammunition in that gun for them. They got lots of bullets.
Well, they do. It's going to be a pretty interesting week. All right, Brandon, we got less than 30 seconds to go. You hated Richmond. Why'd you hate Richmond?
I just never fit my style, man. Could not do it, and I will not be heading anywhere near there until they make a scuba tank out of it.
Well, speaking of scuba, that's what Brendan's doing this weekend. He's down there teaching some scuba lessons. And that wraps it up for us this week on Gone Racing. Hope you got your picks in for the Richmond race or see it this week. And we'll be back next week. I won't be here. Wyatt will be sitting in for me next week on Gone Racing.